Greetings, viewers. This is another episode of the Horn of African Digest panel discussion. Today's session is entitled Geopolitical Positioning, Eritrea, Djibouti, and the Horn of African region. With me to discuss the issue are Maulid Aden from Djibouti and Emmanuel Bademaram from Eritrea. Maulid Aden joined Djibouti Ports and Free Zone Authority as a Director of Security and Security Compliance 5 years ago. Mr. Aden is also an academic and researcher in subjects such as the Belt and Road Project Initiative and the Blue Economy, with the focus on the Horn of Africa and the Indian Ocean. Emmanuel Bademaram is an Eritrean American and a writer who commits his life into serving the underserved. He is a dedicated humanitarian with extensive community development and charitable nonprofit activities, especially in low-income housing and community revitalization programs. Most notably, he has written 2 books. One of them is The History of the United States in Eritrea, from Franklin Roosevelt to Barack Obama, and How Donald Trump Changed the Course of History. Thank you very much, both of you. It's very great to have you here, and I'm looking for an insightful discussion with you today regarding issues of the Horn of Africa. Emmanuel is speaking to us from Washington, D.C., and Maulid is in Djibouti. Welcome to both of you. I'm very glad to have you on our panel today. It's an absolute privilege for our African Renaissance Television Services to have you here. So we are here today on another episode of the Horn of African Digest program. So we are talking about the strategic importance of Djibouti, Eritrea, and Ethiopia, as the 3 countries are a gateway to the Horn of African region. Developments in this area, it directly affects countries like Ethiopia. It's critical, especially for countries like Ethiopia, which are landlocked and whose future depends on a good and productive relationship with its neighbors, including Eritrea and Ethiopia. So today we are focusing on Djibouti and Eritrea and the implications that these developments have for the wider Horn of African region. So Emmanuel, let me start by you. Welcome again. You are an author. I saw that you wrote 2 books. One of them is The History of the United States in Eritrea, from Franklin Roosevelt to Barack Obama, and How Donald Trump Changed the Course of History. And since you have written about Eritrea's recent history at the end of the Cold War, could you give us some critical milestones that this young African nation state, Eritrea, has developed in this time?
Thank you for having me. I like the name, the African Renaissance Program. I really like that. I thank you for taking the time to do this, to educate the public about the Horn of Africa, Africa in general, and its importance to the world, not only to the Horn of Africa but to the international community. Eritrea's milestones are incredible. We managed to sign the peace agreement, the Algiers agreement, making sure that the boundaries are signed and sealed forever, to not have an issue, and it is internationally known boundaries that are set. And after that, the no war, no peace, the sanctions, and not only that, we were able to maintain the country successfully while developing the country under incredible circumstances. And that's really a very, very important achievement. And also, throughout the entire struggle, the people of Eritrea have been together as one. No matter what happened, they stood together, they understood, they focused on what was important, what's important, and they, just hankered down, and, they kept hunkering down to the point where now we have turned the tide, not only in Eritrea, but in the region. You see how Ethiopia's resistance is working against the Western push, and the same thing with Somalia. We have to see what Djibouti would do. But I'm sure the Djiboutians will embrace the region and work along with the region for the betterment of the region, without having to put the competition ahead of the lives and the livelihood of everything else. So these are some of the key milestones that I think are extremely significant that people need to know. The way Eritreans really managed to stay afloat to get to this point and to make Eritrea one of the most important players in the region and in the world is in itself one of the biggest feats of in history, and also the military achievements that we achieved over the years.
Thank you, Emmanuel. I admire your enthusiasm in listing out the critical developments of this young African nation. To be honest, I wish you would have included or may have given an emphasis on the recent turning of the tide, as you said, with the unexpected rapprochement between Ethiopia and Eritrea, which the entire world was caught by surprise, but it turned out to be a completely different paradigm shift in the region. About what Djibouti would follow, as you say, let's wait and see. But Maulid is with us today from Djibouti, so when he gets his chance, I'm sure he will have his reflections on that. Just before I go to Maulid, though, I wanted to add on to Emmanuel to ask you another question regarding the U.S. Foreign policy, which in your books you have been referring to the U.S. foreign policy in general. So I am very sure that you have some views about the Biden administration's policy towards the Horn of Africa, particularly Ethiopia and Eritrea. What's the reflections? How do you characterize this policy development by the U.S. government?
The previous policies, it's just for perspective, let me just go back a little bit. The United States came into Africa in 1941, right during the war. The British asked for help. The United States decided to get involved, and they defeated Italy in 1941. And at that time, the United States found a way to enter Africa, and with the cooperation of, they basically led France and England to cooperate with the United States and really establish a new Cold War era policy for Africa. And what they wanted to do, they basically allowed British and France to control the parts that they controlled before to avoid the Soviet Union. And that is where the Francophone and the Anglophone Africa comes. And after that, you have the Cold War ending. After the Cold War ended, the Bush administration, after that, the Clinton administration started a program, a post-Cold War program for Africa. And that was spearheaded by first George Bush, the older George Bush, the father, and later President Bill Clinton. And that is the policy that is continuing right now. What is that is, they have 4 anchor states and regional economic communities, or RECs, that basically funnel their relationship with Africa through. And that went on. And the anchor countries like Ethiopia, what they did is basically forwarded American agenda, Western agendas in the region, and especially diplomatically, militarily, economically, especially militarily, as what the TPLF Weyane was doing for a long time, just working as the extension of the United States. And so when the Biden administration came, because President Trump let go, allowed the peace to start, a gap was created in the region. There was absence of US presence for a period of 4 years. And that allowed Eritrea and Ethiopia to establish themselves. What also happened at that time is that the TPLF took all the arms and the influence into Tigray, really basically vacating Ethiopia and American influence away from the center, which is Addis Ababa, to Tigray. And the TPLF was operating from within Tigray for 2 years, trying to reassert itself, trying to find ways to come back to the region or to get independent. to become independent, Tigray. And the Trump administration didn't entertain that, but the Biden administration, which most of them are from the Obama administration, the continuation of the Obama administration. You're talking about Ambassador Susan Rice, Blinken, Secretary Blinken, Jack Sullivan, Gail Smith, Samantha Power, all these people. There are a lot of others. They were part of the previous administration, the Obama administration. When they came, they want to restart what the Obama administration did. So basically, it became a continuation of the Obama administration. Because of that, what they restarted was they came in support of the TPLF. They did not want the Abiy Ahmed's government to stand, and so they pushed and they pushed and they pushed, and they basically, in the process, when the TPLF was defeated militarily, the way that it has, when it is contained in Tigray, and it is not able to assert itself beyond that, and the U.S. policy just basically was eliminated from the region. Eritrea, they didn't have any presence in Eritrea. They didn't have any presence in. They don't have any presence in Ethiopia because they supported the TPLF and they worked against the Abiy Ahmed government. And also, the Somalia situation came up, and so there's a regional connection that just came about that really changed the dynamic, the global dynamics of the region and the world, for that matter, because it is one of the most critical waterways of the world, where 40% of the world trade goes through. So that is. Kind of in a nutshell, the policy, or what the Biden administration did, and how they managed to falter and basically eliminate themselves from having a meaningful strategic presence in the region, which was replaced by China with the Belt and Road Initiative that Ethiopia.
We'll come to that, Emmanuel. We'll come to that. I have another question related directly to that. So. When I follow up on you a few minutes later, I'll come with that with a particular concern. So let me go to Maulid for now. Maulid, thanks for coming again. How do you characterize Djibouti's development trajectory, Maulid, especially in the recent years, the last 7 years or so?
Hi, Emmanuel. It was really interesting listening to you, and thanks for meeting you. To answer your question, I think, and I wrote an article about Djibouti's progress during the last 20 years, I think you can retain two things. One has been that the GDP has been multiplied within the last 2 years, in the last 20 years. So it went from 1 billion to 3 billion. And Djibouti's growth overall has been positive between 5 to 6% in the last decade. So that's if you're talking about the overall economic growth. This has been characterized by the building of ports from 1 to 6 now. And I think if you were to do that in one word, it has been positive for the last 20 years. Has poverty been alleviated? Unfortunately, no. And I think what we're seeing today is that this economic growth and prosperity macroeconomically has now trickled down to the needs of every citizen, and that the government has not hidden away from it. And I think that the president, when he came back this term, has been very explicit in saying that this is the time to share the growth that has been generated during the last 20 years.
Okay, so Emmanuel was giving us his reflections about the U.S. policy, especially the current government's policy, or the last Obama's administration, towards the Horn of Africa, and especially in Eritrea and Ethiopia. So in that connection, how do you describe the U.S. policy specifically regarding in Djibouti? Are there similarities in approach with the policy of the U.S., what they have in Eritrea and Ethiopia, as opposed to what they have in Djibouti?
I think compared to Eritrea and Ethiopia, Djibouti is quite unique in the region from a U.S. economic policy. And that's basically and mainly based on that they have the only main permanent military base in the Horn of Africa. So the military presence, I think, is directly linked to the U.S. policy towards Djibouti. What we have seen during the last 5 years, and it's no secret to anyone, is with the opening of the Chinese military base and with the upcoming of Chinese investment in strategic areas, DC-based politicians have been more critical of Djibouti. They've been critical in the subject of human rights. They've been critical in terms of being what do you call it? Being the second option compared to China. So, but they have maintained a consistency in terms of military to military and government to government relation. So I think compared to Ethiopia during the last 2 years and Eritrea the last 18, 20 years, the US policy of towards the government of Djibouti has been more or less consistent, despite the politician back in DC adapting to the evolving regional strategic importance, moving from one way to the other. That's my personal view.
So, oh yeah, of course it is. But as Emmanuel was saying, let's wait and see how Djibouti would react to this. So, what do you think would be the fundamental factor for the U.S. to make its policy continually persistent on Djibouti, as opposed to vacillating every now and then on Eritrea and Ethiopia?
Djibouti has always been proactively going out and saying that everyone is welcome in Djibouti. So basically, there was no preferred choice or partnership. However, the difference is that the Silk, the what do you call it, the Belt and Road project,
Beltway,
yes, has brought more than $2 billion of investment, whereas the US, in terms of the private industry investment, has been next to none. Yes, you do have a positive initiative such as Djibouti First that has been put through the Congress, which provide Djibouti with the preferential treatment. You have the AGOA project, but there hasn't been any direct FDI US from US origin that has been invested in Djibouti. I think my personal view is if ever Djibouti has or will do any review on the positioning of military base of the US in Djibouti, that will probably be the trigger point that the US policy will shift from one island to the other. I think the fact that that relationship and that permanent posting still exists, the overall relationship will remain stable, will remain equal. But I think Djibouti remains a strategic position for the US, and then that will ensure that it has some sort of a continuity in its view towards.
Okay, let me get back to Emmanuel. It's a different set of question. As you know, Djibouti, Eritrea, and including Sudan have a very strategically important coastline, which is geostrategically extremely critical. So why is this region of the world so important and critical, and what must be done amongst regional actors to ensure that the region benefits cooperatively from the huge landmass and coastline that it occupies?
When you have a huge chunk of the global economy passing through one lane, which is the Red Sea, with two choke points, which is the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb, where Djibouti and Yemen are, and the other side, Saudi Arabia and Egypt. The Silk or the Belt and Road Initiative, the China's Belt and Road agenda working through, where 23% of the oil goes through that. It is the lifeline of the European countries that are close to the Mediterranean Sea, and all of them have to go through the Red Sea in order to go to the Indian Ocean and trade with countries in Asia. That is extreme. It's a lifeline of the world. If it shuts down for a day, the impact that it has on the world is just incredible. We saw that there was a vessel that derailed in the Suez Canal and shut down the world economy. I think it was for about a month, and there was just so much disruption. It was, it's really hard to quantify. So it is significant. And also the area is rich in terms of resources. It has incredible resources, and it is also huge in terms of population. The population growth in the area, when you look at Ethiopia, Sudan, Eritrea, Somalia, South Sudan, all coming together, you have over 200 million people. Djibouti, 200 million people in the region, and with a lot of resources, gas, potash, gold, you name it, it's in there. And it is also for the Belt and Road Initiative, just like Djibouti is, just like Kenya is, Eritrea and Sudan are the gateway to China into Africa, because through Eritrea, they could, and Ethiopia, they already have a train line that goes from Djibouti to Ethiopia and then goes back to Gadar, Sudan, and is supposed to go through Central Africa and to West Africa. This is all China's agenda. And now that Eritrea is a part of the Belt and Road Initiative, it has signed the agreement. What's going to do is going to really shorten Chinese trade into Africa. It's going to give them special access into Africa. And so that really draws in into the United States, because the United States is directly competing. It's fighting over the influence in the Horn of Africa. And also you have new commerce like India and Russia. Well, Russia is not new, but all these countries, Turkey, they want to establish presence, and they're competing with the United States. And it's an extremely important place for them. And also the Nile, the water of the Nile is another important aspect of the importance of the region. And on top of that, you have the Middle East countries right there, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, and you have the Yemen situation. And it is reshaping. It's reshaping. The Gulf states are getting out of the oil economy, trying to diversify, trying to do things that are different. For example, the Saudis have now Vision 2030, which is to really make the Red Sea coast a hub of tourism for generations to come. And that's going to be able to transform the region in ways that we've never seen. So this is also important, because how Eritrea, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya, Sudan are reshaped after World War II now is going to be able to have a ripple effect into the deeper African continent. And so this is an important moment in history in our lives. We're witnessing a transformation of geopolitical approach from a post-Cold War era to a new era that the U.S. does not dominate. This is a multipolar global arrangement that's really going to bring a new way of seeing Africa and life in Africa. So basically, that's how I see it.
To summarize, I mean, it's, as you said, the most important path to follow for this sensitive and critically important area is cooperation and integration among countries like Eritrea, Ethiopia, Sudan, possibly, and Djibouti, of course, Somaliland, and Somalia. Let me go to Maulid on a similar kind of question. So Djibouti, is also a littoral state with a coastline, which is, although not as long as Eritrea's, it is so critical, and the port development in Djibouti is spectacular, has been, I mean, as we have been witnessing. So what is, in your view, the most important critical effect that this modern infrastructure in the port of Djibouti is contributing to Djibouti and the Horn of Africa in general? And let me combine another question with you. So this, and the development of the ports is amazing, as I said, and it's also rapidly moving, as Maulid also told us, how the GDP skyrocketed in very few years. So can this region be inviting, or being at the risk of inviting predatory trade practices among powers in the international economic system? And what challenge would there be that could come with this kind of rapid development, Maulid?
I think it would have been nice that the paper I'm working on has been finished, because it basically talks about the importance of the Horn of Africa coastline in this ever-evolving geopolitical, what do I call it? I would call it a game, or even a new Cold War that's happening in the Indian Ocean Pacific, which is directly linking the Indian Ocean. So Djibouti, Eritrea, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, Kenya, Somalia are all located in probably the fourth biggest shipping line road in the region. So Djibouti has diversified its maritime infrastructure, going from one general port to 6 terminals with specific area of expertise. So you go from an oil terminal to a container terminal. What is he doing for the region? I think its aim is to become the facilitator, not only for the Ethiopian, for the commercial market as a whole. Yes, China has invested 1.4 billion, becoming one of the biggest investors in the maritime and infrastructure. Is it becoming the leader? Yes. If you combine what it's doing already in Ethiopia, if Eritrea was to join, as it has done in November, the Belt and Road initiatives, as Somalia has joined the Belt and Road initiative, as Kenya has joined, I think overall China will probably become the biggest player in this region. And the US policy in terms of investment has been lacking around. My worry is, you mentioned about, would this be a predatory behavior from those big players? And it's not only China. We're talking about India. We're talking about Turkey setting up manufacturing centers in Ethiopia, building up a military base in Somalia. You've got the old French, British going back through years of colonization, coming back through the Quad and all the military concepts that will allow them to say supply chain through the region. I think my biggest worry is there is no correlation between our neighbors and what we can achieve as a region. And a good example is we have all those ports across the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. And we should be going towards complementary facility and expertise rather than being a competition between ports, competition between infrastructure. And I think an integrated strategic framework for the region will allow us to become and speak in one voice to fight against any predatory economic pressure. And I think the removal of Ethiopia from the AGOA market, it's a way of the US imposing measures economically that will hurt the economic growth. And it's not only going to hurt the economic growth, because we Djiboutian will be impacted, because most of the exports of Ethiopian raw materials usually go through the port of Djibouti. So indirectly, we also get infected. I think if we cooperate together and if we use complementary strategies that mutually reinforce the weakness and the strength of each country, we will be able to fight against predatory trading markets.
Trade
I think we can all
okay.
contribute to the benefit of the mutual gain for the region as a whole.
Okay, I'll come up with another question regarding that. But before that, let me go to Emmanuel. So let me give him a chance to build up on what you are saying. Speaking about trade and FDI, what's your view, Emmanuel, on China's interest in the region? Some commentators are saying that that's potentially a Cold War, an economic Cold War between China and the West, and Ethiopia and Eritrea particularly, probably may end up in becoming proxy battlefields for this conflict between China and probably the US. So what exactly do you think is China's interest in the region, Emmanuel, briefly?
China's interest is basically to connect all its partners through the Belt and Road Initiative, which started in 2013 with Xi Jinping coming to power. And the Cold War analysis, I think, is a little bit different this time, because the Belt and Road Initiative, initially, when it started, the first goal was to reconnect with Russia in ways that we've never seen. So they basically have integrated their economic, strategic, political, military relations to a different level. And because of the sanctions that were imposed on Russia and all the hardship that it faced post-Cold War, China became a lifeline for Russia. Russia is now in a different place. And on top of that, you have India that have the same kind of interest. A lot of people undermine the importance of Turkey. Turkey is probably one of the most important players because it sits in one of the most strategic locations in the world for a number of reasons. So there are so many competitors that are coming into Africa. They see the future development is going to take place in Africa for a number of reasons, which is you have a large population, incredible resources. The growth opportunity for markets in Africa is on a different level. So China's approach is basically to develop the markets so it could be able to sell its goods and services and have partners in Africa in ways that the European countries never did. And the European countries and the West, led by the United States, basically stripped the continent bare. They were just trying to take advantage. They didn't want sovereignty. They didn't want independence of nations. They didn't want sovereign, powerful nations to stay alive, so they can basically pillage and plunder the resources of the continent. And the Belt and Road Initiative, China's approach, basically undermined everything that they were doing. And it was gradually, slowly, really building momentum to the point where now they are the number one contributors to the lives of African continent, to the people or countries in the African continent. And so the United States was absent, was completely caught off guard by what China has done and how it was able to penetrate. So now what the United States is trying to do is trying to put hurdles. Just like, you run, there are hurdles, always you find something to stop you. So you have this situation in different places around the world. In Tigray right now, why is the United States so interested in Tigray? And the reason is because you have three countries coming together right where Tigray is located: Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Sudan. And that is going to be an access for China to go into Central Africa through Chad, Niger, and it goes all the way down to Burkina Faso, to Mali, and all those different places. This is the rail system. And so the United States wants to position itself in a way that is going to be able to create a problem for it. And the South China Sea agenda that the US is pursuing, the Pentagon just received $770 billion on the budget, mainly to contain China. And this containment policy is extremely aggressive. And it's not only against China, it's also against Russia and Ukraine, I'm sorry. And so you can't see this. This is the United States trying to catch up to China, trying to stop China's influence in Africa, and trying to undermine China's progress in the region. And I don't think it's going to work. The United States needs to change its approach in Africa and partner with Africa to be able to have success. But I don't think the region, whether it's Ethiopia, Djibouti, Somalia, or Eritrea, is going to entertain the idea of a Cold War in our region, because we want to partner with all these different countries, just like what the Djiboutian brother is saying, Mr. Walid Moulid, about, we are open to everybody. We are open to everybody. We want to be able to embrace the development of the region. We want to be able to become important players in the world economy without being to play pawns in geopolitical stances of the world. So that's how I see it.
All right. Thank you, Emmanuel. So that leads to us into a very interesting follow-up question to Maulid. talking about proxy war or proxy battlegrounds and foreign powers competing on another land. I'm sure you heard about the recent reports that emerged from Djibouti about China's increasing investment in Djibouti's military. Naval vessels have been funded, trucks for the army, and other forms of arms support. So in your view, do you think this is a viable strategy for Djibouti to follow, like allowing China to infiltrate its military, or not infiltrate actually, but to support its military and then create the risk of being a battleground for China's conflict with any other power, be it the United States or someone else? What do you say about this, Maulid?
Daniel, I'll agree with Emmanuel on one thing is I think we don't want to be a battleground for proxy war. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. Secondly, I think this report is missing one key component. Mm-hmm. Djibouti and China have elevated their relationship to a strategic level, and that has included economic support, financial support, military support, and so on and so on. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, other forces that are present in Djibouti have also got different relationships. For example, with the French, Djibouti has a defense pact which allows them to defend if they've been attacked.
Sure.
So the American are also training its security forces. The Japanese are training the Djibouti Coast Guards. So from a Djibouti perspective, I think what the Djibouti government is playing a balanced role by allowing everyone to come up with what they can contribute to enhancing military defense and training capability.
So you say that it's a viable strategy, yeah. Yeah, it's a good strategy for Djibouti to follow that.
Yeah, but Djibouti has never said that it was solely and exclusively will be going to China in terms of hardware, the training, and so on and so on. The Djiboutian military has been trained by other forces. They have been equipped, and I'll give you a simple example. The Gendarmerie, which is a military unit, has just been the recipient of a French donation for military equipment. But it hasn't taken the same highlights that the Chinese providing with 2 vessels to Djibouti and a few trucks has got from the Western world. What I'm trying to say is sometimes some of the people are just crying a wolf without even going into deep understanding of what the relationship is. And Djibouti has been in every corner advocating, trying to say that everyone is welcome in its territory, everyone is welcome to invest, everyone is welcome to become a partner. And I think what the US and others should be doing is trying to catch up with China in terms of investment, in terms of building schools, in building of the soft powers, because at the end of the day, in terms of investment, China has led and is leading by putting into the table this great vision of integrated regional and continental trade through its Belt and Road initiatives. So I think it's for us as African to sit down, evaluate, and accept who we work with and what we want. At the end of the day, it's for the Africans to determine their own future.
Thank you so much, Maulid. Just before I go to Emmanuel once more, briefly, Maulid, I want to have your reflections for our viewers regarding a report that came out from Djibouti's Natural Resources Ministry, where it is said that Djibouti plans to reach 100% electrification by the year 2035. Do you see this is and it has an ambitious clean energy program, as according to the report. So what do you think does Djibouti have to be able to achieve this, and how do you relate this to with your own perspective with Ethiopia's own electrification objectives to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam? Briefly, Maulid.
I will start with the GRD. Do you know that Djibouti was one of the first countries to buy the GRD shares when the Ethiopian government was setting up the Grand Renaissance Dam? So that tells you that Djibouti's commitment to the GRD and Ethiopia development in terms of the Renaissance Dam has been an ongoing objective and acceptance that is within Ethiopian interest to do the electrification. And every Ethiopian has got the right to have electrified households. I think Djibouti has shown the lead in terms of giving the support to Ethiopia. For for the green, I think the 2030 vision of Djibouti through 100% energy has been set by the government. Green energy, so the what's called aeolian power will go and find it is the geothermal that they are trying to do from a government perspective. So I think Djibouti's ambition is to go beyond anyone else and to become the first African country to become green and to be electrified by green energy.
Okay, thank you. That was a very good summary, Maulid. So let me go to Emmanuel before we run out of time. In a different kind of issue, but related in a way. I'm sure, Emmanuel, you are aware of the multidimensional ways that the conflict that Ethiopia has been forced to engage in the last 15 months at the northern part of the country has had on a wider regional stability in the Horn. So what, in your views, should be done in medium term to bring this conflict to an end? It seems to be going to an end, but just to be sure, what should be done in a medium term to restore regional stability, which over 100 million people have been deprived for so long?
You know, it is extremely important for the TPLF to be defeated and the people of Tigray to have a semblance of peace. And it is critical that Tigray, the region, comes into peace, because without peace, we're not going to be able to have any kind of progress. And it's imperative for Ethiopia to control the security situation in Tigray. And that is going to happen, because when you look at what happened in Ethiopia the last 2 years, 80% of the Ethiopian army was in Tigray. The military, the personnel, the hardware was in Tigray. Now that is neutralized, or it will be neutralized shortly. And that is, the people of Ethiopia and Eritrea will make sure that that's going to happen, because it is imperative for our future.
You seem to be so sure about that, Emmanuel.
Oh, I'm 100% sure.
Okay.
I'm 100%
yeah,
sure.
Go ahead.
Eritrea will not allow the TPLF to do what it did in the past. Our lives were held hostage. Ethiopian lives were held hostage. The region was held hostage. It was basically a surrogate of Western operations in Africa, and Africa was held hostage. So in so many ways, we're just entering a new era of Africa, and Eritrea and Ethiopian connection and Somalia's connection, the regional integration is coming to fruition, and hopefully Djibouti will play a significant part in that. And then we all embrace, unless there is peace, we're not going to be able to do anything. The United States will not stop to make sure that its interests are attained, and China will do the same, but it's up to the region. And I think we have turned a corner, because Ethiopia is able to stand the pressures of the United States, and is now, they don't have any leverage, which is the TPLF. They don't have any leverage. Because of that, they are forced to deal with Ethiopia, not in the ways that they envisioned a couple of months ago, but totally differently. So it is up to us. We were talking about soft power earlier. What Eritrea was able to do is basically build dams, roads, infrastructure, clean energy, everything while under sanctions. Now we don't really need for anybody to come and build our medical facilities. We have been able to educate tens of thousands of students in different areas in ways that no other. We focus on human resources development. Under tremendous amount of pressure, we're able to make difference. Eritrea is one of the most literate countries in Africa, even in the world. Most Eritreans are, there's no illiteracy in Eritrea, you can say that. The healthcare programs in Eritrea, education is free. And that has been, going on for a long time while under sanctions and everything else. So we don't want the United States to come and say, we're going to build schools for you. We have already done that. We don't want anybody to come and do that. When we take care of ourselves, and then it gives us an opportunity to do things to deal with them at a different level, not have to worry about the soft powers that the West provides, get involved in the infrastructure and development of Africa in ways that we envision it and want it to be. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Emmanuel, I would have liked to pursue on that line of questioning. I'm sure you are going to be a guest of the Horn of African Digest very soon. I will follow up with the statements that you made and then continue on the discussion. But now let me get back to Maulid on the same analysis. How do you characterize the conflict that has been going on in Ethiopia in the last 15 months, especially with the attacks being made on Afar region's road and railway connections? That's the lifeline of Ethiopia, and the militants attacking those areas and trying to capture the town. It would implicate Djibouti one way or another. So in your view, Maulid, what can bring peace or an end to this conflict very soon?
Of external trade of Ethiopia through Djibouti. So the risk is mutually inclusive. So if Ethiopia is affected, Djibouti is affected too. What we have seen is, and we were talking this off the record when we first met, is we have already seen economically that the war has affected us. We have seen the impact it had on people. So we have seen an increase of refugees, and we have seen a slow of the trade between the two countries. At the same time, we have also seen an instability linked to ethnic communities within Djibouti that can be to some extent originated from the conflict in the region. What's the way forward? I think Djibouti, and including Djiboutian like me, are advocating for one thing: peace within Ethiopia has to be led by Ethiopians. So no anyone else can bring peace to Ethiopia but except Ethiopians.
Well, let me summarize because we're running short of time. Let me give the chance to Emmanuel. I'll give you 1 minute each. I would be very grateful if you can limit your reflections on that 1 minute. So what messages would you like to convey to Ethiopian government policymakers and civil society, not only in Ethiopia, but in Eritrea, Djibouti as well, and the Horn of African regions, and our viewers of this program? Any thoughts, final thoughts that you would like to share from the perspective of your own national circumstances and the implications to Ethiopia? First to Emmanuel, and then to Maulid, and then we'll finish off. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this program, to bring awareness to the issues of the region. Secondly, I second Mr. Maulid about, the Ethiopia solutions can only come from Ethiopia. As long as it doesn't impact the regions. If there's an overflow, then the countries that are affected have to respond in the right manner. Eritrea has played a constructive role in that. And I would like Djibouti to come into the fray and play a constructive role, engaging with Eritrea. And, the same thing with Somalia, the same thing with Sudan. I think we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to stabilize the region and bring an economy that's going to be able to make a difference for hundreds of millions of people, and to really be important international players in the economy and development of the world. And we have the capacity to do that. Eritrea has shown that we are able to withstand all kinds of pressures, military, economic, political, diplomatic, everything, and pressures. We are able to withstand that. And now we have an opportunity to really make a difference in the world in ways that, that we've never anticipated 10 years, 20 years ago. And Ethiopia could benefit greatly from it. Ethiopia could benefit from Somalia, from Kenya's development, from Djibouti's development, from Eritrea's development, from Sudan's development, because we are all interconnected in so many different ways. So the future is bright as long as we are focused, connected, militarily strong, people-oriented, and I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you so much. That was a very nice summary, Emmanuel. I really appreciate it. Maulid, any final thoughts on your perspective from the national circumstances in Djibouti and the implications about Ethiopia?
I just want to finish by saying thank you to you and thank you to the TV that this subject is brought to the Africans to be able to debate openly and in the air. I think I will agree with what most Emmanuel have said. It's the future is bright. It's for us to take the lifetime opportunity of being able to benefit positively in the development of the trade. But at the same time, I think for the Djibouti perspective, is a stable Ethiopia, a stable and prosperous Ethiopia is beneficial for Ethiopia and for Djibouti. So we would encourage, as much as from the government as well as the Djiboutian nationals and citizens, is that Ethiopia regains its unity, its peace, and the prosperity that it has seen during the last few years. Then, collectively, we can all gain from a prosperous Horn of Africa. But what we need to do is we need to be able to support each other in times of conflict, but at the same time to be able to contribute positively to each other and ensure that we all have the same objective: peace, security, and prosperity for the Horn of Africa. That's not leaving anyone behind.
Thank you so much, Maulid. I really appreciate that. And thank you, both of you, Emmanuel in Washington, D.C., Maulid in Djibouti. I wish you a very good day, Emmanuel, and I wish you a very good evening, Maulid. I very much hope that we will have another session with both of you in another episode of the Horn of African Digest program at the African Renaissance Television Services. And I'm very much happy for your insightful discussion, and the panel was very enlightening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.